Long before he earned the title the Betrayer, Kharn was born among the stars. Unlike his future Primarch Angron, who suffered the brutalities of Nuceria, Kharn's origins trace back to a technologically advanced human society on a world that had maintained much of the knowledge from the Dark Age of technology. Historical records from the early Great Crusade indicate he was born to a warrior caste, his genetic makeup already predisposed to combat excellence even before the Legion's Astartes recruitment protocols reshaped his physiology. The Warhounds, as the 12th Legion was originally known, recruited from various worlds as the Emperor's forces expanded across the galaxy. Kharn was selected during one of these recruitment drives, his natural aggression and tactical acumen marking him as ideal Legion material. Apothecary records note that he survived the gene seed implantation process with remarkable resilience, adapting to the changes faster than most initiates. Even in these early days, Kharn demonstrated a controlled ferocity that would serve him well in the decades to come. During his formative years in the Legion, Kharn distinguished himself not through uncontrolled bloodlust, but through disciplined application of violence. Training logs from this period describe a space marine who could assess battlefield conditions with cold precision while maintaining the aggression that characterized the Warhounds. His ascent through the ranks came through merit rather than mere brutality, a fact often overlooked in later Imperial histories that focus solely on his post-heresy persona. The Warhounds operated for nearly a century before being reunited with their Gene Father. During this time, they earned a reputation for effectiveness and loyalty to the Emperor's vision. They were known for their direct approach to warfare. While other legions might employ elaborate strategies, the Warhounds preferred to identify the enemy's strongest point and break it through overwhelming force. Kharn thrived in this environment, eventually rising to command a company through his tactical insights and battlefield prowess. The discovery of Angron changed everything for the 12th Legion. The Primarch was found on Nuceria, where he had lived as a slave gladiator, implanted with archaeotech devices known as the Butcher's Nails, cortical implants that amplified aggression while suppressing all other emotions. Unlike most Primarch reunions, Angron's was marked by bitterness. The Emperor had teleported Angron away from a last stand with his fellow gladiators, denying him an honorable death alongside the only family he had ever known. This resentment permeated Angron's relationship with his legion. Historical accounts from remembrancers assigned to the 12th describe a Primarch who viewed his sons with indifference at best and contempt at worst. It was during this tumultuous period that Kharn first distinguished himself to his Gene Father. While many Legion officers were slain by Angron during his initial fits of rage, Kharn reportedly stood his ground before the Primarch, neither backing down nor showing fear. This display of courage earned him a measure of respect from Angron that few others enjoyed. Kharn became one of the few Warhounds who could approach their Primarch during his darker moods without risking immediate violence. This unique position would eventually lead to his appointment as Angron's equerry, the Primarch's chief advisor and representative. The transformation of the Warhounds into the World Eaters marked another critical juncture in Kharn's development. Angron, dissatisfied with his legion's performance, ordered the implementation of the Butcher's Nails among his sons, mimicking the implants he himself bore. Apothecary records from this period reveal a disturbing pattern. While many Marines died during the procedure or were driven to uncontrollable madness, Kharn adapted to the neural implants with remarkable success. The nails fundamentally altered the neurochemistry of the legionaries who survived the procedure. They rewarded violence with pleasure and punished restraint with pain. For most World Eaters, this created a downward spiral into mindless savagery. Kharn, however, maintained a precarious balance. The nails certainly affected him. Battle recordings show increased aggression and combat efficiency, but he retained his tactical acumen and disciplined approach to warfare longer than most of his brothers. As captain of the 8th Assault Company, Kharn led from the front, often being the first to make planetfall during invasions. His company specialized in shock assaults, breaking enemy formations and creating openings for the rest of the Legion to exploit. Under his leadership, the 8th earned commendations during several notable campaigns, including the pacification of the Cerberus Rebellion and the compliance of the Nephilim. battlefield data slates from joint operations with other legions reveal the respect Kharn commanded among his peers. Iron Warrior's tactical officers noted his ability to identify and exploit weaknesses in enemy fortifications. Luna Wolves' captains commended his precision in decapitation strikes against enemy leadership. Even the typically aloof Emperor's children recognized his skill in close-quarters combat, with one report from Lord Commander Eidolon grudgingly acknowledging Kharn as perhaps the most effective close combat specialist outside our own first company. This professional respect extended beyond mere combat prowess. Before the heresy, Kharn was known as a thoughtful officer who could articulate the World Eater's tactical doctrine to other Legion commands. During war councils, he often served as Angron's voice when the Primarch was indisposed or uninterested in strategic discussions. His diplomatic skills, surprising in a World Eater, helped smooth relations with Imperial Army commanders and planetary governors who might otherwise have been alienated by his Legion's growing reputation for excessive violence. The relationship between Kharn and Angron evolved into something unique among the Legions. While most Primarchs maintained a godlike distance from their sons, Angron's background as a slave gladiator gave him a different perspective. He had fought alongside equals on New Syria, and in Kharn, he found something approximating a comrade rather than merely a subordinate. Fragmentary personal logs recovered from Kharn's quarters aboard the Legion flagship Conqueror suggest he viewed this relationship with complex emotions, pride at the special status, concern for his Primarch's deteriorating mental state, and growing unease at the direction the Legion was taking. The neural implants affected both Angron and Kharn in profound ways, though the manifestations differed. For Angron, the nails were slowly killing him, causing progressive neural degeneration that medical officers estimated would eventually prove fatal. The Primarch lived in a state of perpetual pain, finding relief only in the heat of battle when the implants flooded his system with combat stimulants and endorphins. Kharn's experience was less severe, but no less transformative. Early after receiving the implants, he developed coping mechanisms that allowed him to channel the artificial rage. Meditation techniques, possibly learned from contact with librarians from other legions before the Edict of Nicaea, helped him maintain control outside of combat situations. However, each battle made this control more tenuous, as the nails rewired his neural pathways to crave the stimulation of violence. The World Eater's deteriorating discipline became evident in their combat record. Compliance actions that should have been straightforward often resulted in excessive civilian casualties. Planetary surrenders were ignored as the Legion pursued combat for its own sake. These excesses required increasing intervention from other Imperial forces, including the Ultramarines and Imperial Fists, who were sometimes deployed to ensure compliance operations didn't devolve into massacres. Throughout this period, Kharn attempted to maintain standards within his own company. Training regiments from the 8th Assault Company show continued emphasis on target prioritization and battlefield awareness, even as other companies abandoned such discipline in favor of simple slaughter. His efforts to preserve the Legion's honor earned him respect from warriors like Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard and Garville Loken of the Luna Wolves, who saw in him a kindred spirit fighting against a darkness within his own legion. The martial traditions of the World Eaters before their fall were complex and nuanced, contrary to their later reputation. They maintained fighting pits aboard their vessels, where legionaries could test themselves against their brothers in non-lethal combat. These bouts served as both training and a controlled outlet for the aggression amplified by the nails. Kharn was a champion in these pits, his technique combining the brutal efficiency of the World Eaters with a precision that spoke to his pre-nails training. As Angron's equerry, Kharn also served as the interface between the increasingly unstable Primarch and the Legion's command structure. This position required diplomatic skills and personal courage in equal measure. When Angron's rages threatened to disrupt crucial operations, it was often Kharn who intervened, sometimes at great personal risk. Several incidents recorded in the Legion's battle chronicles describe him physically interposing himself between Angron and other officers, talking the Primarch down from executions or ill-advised tactical decisions. The galaxy-spanning Great Crusade provided endless opportunities for the World Eaters to prove themselves in combat. Kharn's personal tally of compliances and pacifications ranked among the highest of any Legion officer outside the first captains. His methodology, however, differed from the berserker tactics that would later define him. Pre-heresy action reports describe precision drops, targeted elimination of enemy leadership, and disciplined withdrawals when tactical situations demanded it. One notable campaign occurred on the world designated 4716, where a human population had regressed to a feudal state under the domination of Xeno's overlords. Rather than the indiscriminate slaughter that might be expected, Khârn led a series of surgical strikes against the alien ruling caste, minimizing human casualties and preserving infrastructure. The operation was later used as a case study in the Strategio Hereticus as an example of effective compliance action with minimal collateral damage. As the Great Crusade progressed, subtle changes in Khârn's combat doctrine became apparent to those who fought alongside him regularly. The surgical precision remained, but battle brothers noted an increasing reluctance to disengage once combat was joined. Duration logs from his armor systems show he began spending longer periods with elevated combat stimulants in his bloodstream, suggesting the nails were gaining greater influence over his actions. Despite these changes, Khârn maintained his position as one of the most respected officers in the 12th Legion. When joint operations were required, other Legion commands often requested his company specifically, knowing they would receive effective support without the excesses that characterized other World Eaters units. This reputation would make his eventual fall during the heresy all the more shocking to those who had known him during these earlier years. The growing influence of the Nails created a fundamental contradiction within Khârn. His natural temperament and training emphasized control and tactical awareness, while the implants pushed him toward unthinking savagery. This internal conflict manifested in increasingly erratic behavior patterns between battles, periods of monastic silence followed by bursts of intensity during training. Legion Medici reports indicate increasing use of stim suppressants when not in combat, a common coping mechanism among World Eaters trying to manage the constant pain caused by the Nails' punishment of inactivity. The seeds of treachery were sown long before the first bolter fired at Istvan III. As Horus's plans crystallized, he recognized the need to purge his forces of those who would remain loyal to the Emperor. The World Eaters, despite their growing savagery, still contained elements whose dedication to the throne outweighed their loyalty to their Primarch. Khârn found himself at the fulcrum of this bloody calculation. When the War Master's plans for the Loyalist Purge were shared with the traitorous Primarchs, Angron displayed characteristic directness. All suspected Loyalists would be eliminated without subtlety or deception. It was Khârn who convinced his Gene Father of the tactical wisdom in Horus's approach, deploying the suspect elements to the surface of Istvan III. Before virus bombing, the planet would eliminate potential opposition while testing the resolve of those who remained. The initial drop to Istvan III's surface proceeded according to plan. Loyalist elements from the Death Guard, Emperor's children, Sons of Horus, and World Eaters deployed to crush what they believed was a planetary rebellion. Among the World Eaters' contingent were many who had expressed concerns about Angron's deteriorating mental state or questioned the Legion's increasingly excessive methods. Khârn remained aboard the Conqueror during this phase of the operation. His position as equerry required him to coordinate between Angron and the other Legion commands, ensuring the trap closed properly. Tactical logs from the Conqueror's bridge reveal his methodical approach. Deployment zones were carefully selected to maximize the Loyalists' exposure once the virus bombs fell. When the first virus bombs descended upon Istvan III, transforming the atmosphere into a lethal cocktail of toxins, the betrayal was laid bare. Most Loyalists died within minutes, their power armor unable to filter the concentrated viral agents. However, a contingent of Death Guard led by Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow had received warning of the impending treachery. They managed to secure sealed environments, surviving the initial attack. More troubling for the traitors, a World Eaters captain named Aelin also managed to warn some of his battle brothers. These survivors, though vastly outnumbered, established defensive positions in the ruins of the Coral City, Istvan III's capital. Their continued existence represented both a tactical problem and a symbolic one. The purge had failed to be absolute. Angron's response to this development demonstrated the gulf between him and the more calculating traitor Primarchs. While Horus ordered bombardment from orbit to finish the survivors, Angron rejected this approach. The Nails demanded close combat, the spilling of blood by hand rather than from a distance. Without warning or authorization, the Primarch of the World Eaters took a drop pod to the surface, forcing Horus's hand. It was at this moment that Kharn's role in the heresy crystallized. With Angron on the surface and vulnerable to the massed firepower of the Loyalists, the remaining traitor Primarchs had little choice but to deploy their own forces in support. Kharn led the World Eaters' drop assault, commanding the elite elements of the Legion in a direct strike to link up with their Gene Father. The fighting in the ruins of the Coral City represented warfare at its most elemental. Loyalist and traitor Astartes, brothers only hours before, engaged in brutal close-quarters combat among shattered buildings and collapsed thoroughfares. The World Eaters on both sides exemplified their Legion's combat doctrine, with direct assaults and counter-attacks creating a constantly shifting front line. Kharn's tactical acumen remained evident during these engagements. Helmet recordings recovered from fallen Astartes show him directing traitor World Eaters to outflank Loyalist strongpoints rather than engaging in costly frontal assaults. Even as the Nails bit deeper with each passing hour of combat, he maintained enough awareness to coordinate with Sons of Horus and Emperor's Children units, creating combined arms attacks that gradually wore down the Loyalist defenses. The Loyalist World Eaters, led by Captain Aelin, represented a particular challenge. They fought with the same neural implant, enhanced fury as their traitor brothers, but were bolstered by the desperate knowledge that they had been betrayed. Aelin himself was a formidable opponent, having once bested Kharn in the fighting pits aboard the Conqueror. Their inevitable confrontation came 3 days into the ground assault. Aelin had established a defensive position in what had once been a planetary governor's palace. With approximately 40 Loyalist World Eaters, he had repulsed multiple attacks by traitor forces. Kharn, recognizing the symbolic importance of breaking this pocket of resistance, personally led the assault on the palace. The duel between Kharn and Aelin lasted only minutes, but represented a pivotal moment in the former's descent. Combat recordings show Kharn fighting with uncharacteristic abandon, forsaking the measured precision that had previously defined his combat style. When he finally struck Aelin down, he did not deliver a clean death, but instead fell upon his former brother with repeated blows long after any tactical necessity had passed. With Aelin's fall, organized resistance among the Loyalist World Eaters collapsed. The survivors fought on in isolated pockets, but without central coordination, they were hunted down over the following days. Kharn personally accounted for at least a dozen Loyalist Astartes during this cleansing phase, his fighting style growing progressively more frenzied with each engagement. The Istvan III atrocity lasted for nearly 3 months in total, far longer than the traitors had anticipated. When the last Loyalist was finally eliminated, the stage was set for the next phase of Horus's rebellion. The Drop Site Massacre at Istvan V. The Drop Site Massacre represented a different kind of betrayal, not the purging of internal elements, but the ambush of loyal legions responding to news of Horus's treachery. 7 legions were deployed in this operation. 4 would reveal their treachery at a crucial moment, while 3 loyal legions would bear the brunt of this double betrayal. Kharn's role during this engagement differed from his actions on Istvan III. Rather than leading a large formation, he accompanied Angron as part of the Primarch's honor guard. This position gave him a unique perspective on the unfolding massacre and placed him at the center of some of the most intense fighting. The initial phase of the Drop Site Massacre proceeded according to Horus's design. The Loyalist forces, Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamanders, made planetfall and engaged the openly traitor legions, Sons of Horus, World Eaters, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children. The fighting was fierce but measured, with both sides deploying conventional tactics. When the second wave made planetfall, ostensibly to reinforce the Loyalists, the trap was sprung. The Word Bearers, Night Lords, Iron Warriors, and Alpha Legion revealed their true allegiance, catching the loyal legions in a devastating crossfire. It was at this moment that the World Eaters, and Khârn in particular, were unleashed to their full savage potential. Angron led his sons in a direct assault against the Iron Hands, who had pushed deepest into the traitor lines. Khârn fought at his Primarch's side as they carved through Ferrus Manus's veterans. Battlefield-picked captures show him wielding his chain axe with methodical brutality, his armor already so drenched in blood that his legion's white and blue colors were barely visible. A particularly notable engagement occurred when a contingent of salamanders attempted to create an escape corridor for surrounded Raven Guard elements. Khârn led a counter-attack with elements of the 8th Assault Company, driving directly into the salamanders' formation. His target selection showed a coldly efficient prioritization. Apothecaries were singled out first, preventing the recovery of Gene Seed, followed by heavy weapons specialists who might have provided covering fire for a withdrawal. The battle culminated with the confrontation between Ferrus Manus and Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children, resulting in the Iron Hands Primarch's death. While Khârn was not present for this legendary duel, his actions helped ensure that Iron Hands reinforcements could not reach their Primarch in time. His company systematically eliminated Iron Hands command squads, attempting to push through to Ferrus Manus's position, disrupting their chain of command and breaking unit cohesion. By the time the drop site massacre concluded, the 3 loyal legions had been shattered. The Salamanders and Raven Guard were reduced to fragments of their former strength, while the Iron Hands lost both their Primarch and much of their veteran leadership. For Khârn, the battle represented another step in his transformation. Medical logs from the Conqueror show he refused treatment for moderate injuries sustained during the fighting, instead returning immediately to the training cages to maintain the combat stimulation his implants now craved. The aftermath of Istvan V saw the traitor forces divide to pursue different strategic objectives. While Horus moved to consolidate his position, Lorgar of the Word Bearers proposed a joint campaign with the World Eaters. This shadow crusade would target the Ultramar system, home of the 13th Legion, tying down the largest loyalist legion and preventing them from reinforcing Terra. Angron readily agreed to this operation, seeing it as an opportunity for further combat rather than for its strategic value. Khârn, however, recognized the tactical wisdom in Lorgar's proposal. Legion communication logs show he was instrumental in planning the initial assault vectors, identifying vulnerable worlds within Guilliman's realm that could be struck before the Ultramarines could respond in force. The Shadow Crusade began with simultaneous attacks across multiple systems. Khârn led assault elements against the world of Armatura, a key mustering point for Ultramar's defense forces. The fighting on Armatura demonstrated his evolving approach to warfare. Gone was the surgical precision of earlier campaigns, replaced by an emphasis on maximum casualties and psychological impact. Civilian infrastructure became legitimate targets, with Khârn personally leading attacks on population centers to draw out Ultramarines' defenders. When captured Ultramarines questioned these tactics, Khârn's response revealed his changing perspective. According to prisoner interrogation logs, he explained that the purpose was no longer compliance but punishment. The Ultramarines would be forced to witness their failure to protect those under their guardianship. As the Shadow Crusade progressed, a more profound transformation began to affect both Angron and his sons. Lorgar, now fully embracing his role as the heresy's spiritual architect, had determined that Angron's deteriorating physical condition required intervention. The solution he proposed was demonic ascension, the transformation of the World Eater's Primarch into a being of the warp. Khârn was initially skeptical of this approach. Fragments of personal correspondence with Word-Bearers officers show he questioned whether such metaphysical matters should take precedence over military objectives. However, as Angron's condition worsened, with the nails causing increasingly frequent episodes of uncontrollable rage followed by near catatonic collapse, Khârn's position shifted. The ritual that would transform Angron required specific conditions, a place of slaughter on a massive scale, with death energies concentrated enough to thin the barrier between real space and the warp. The world of Nuceria, Angron's homeworld, was selected for this purpose. The choice was both practical and symbolic, allowing the Primarch to exact revenge on the society that had enslaved him, while generating the bloodshed needed for the ritual. Kharn's role in the assault on Nuceria was multifaceted. He commanded the vanguard forces that established landing zones for the main World Eaters contingent, eliminating planetary defense batteries with characteristic efficiency. Once the Legion made planetfall in force, he coordinated between the World Eaters and Word-Bearers elements, ensuring the latter could perform their ritual workings while the former generated the needed slaughter. The campaign on Nuceria represented the final phase of Kharn's pre-demonic transformation. As the World Eaters rampaged across the planet, the influence of Khorne, the chaos god of blood and war, became increasingly evident in their actions. Battlefield recordings show Kharn leading his company in ritualistically arranged massacres, with victims positioned to form 8-pointed stars, or skulls, when viewed from above. When Robout Guilliman arrived with Ultramarines reinforcements to defend Nuceria, the ritual was already nearing completion. The confrontation between Guilliman and Angron might have resulted in the latter's death had the ritual not reached its culmination at the critical moment. As Angron ascended to demonhood, reality itself buckled around him, and the World Eaters who witnessed this transformation were forever changed. For Kharn, the sight of his Primarch's demonic apotheosis represented a revelation. The being he had served for decades was now unmistakably a creature of chaos, a physical manifestation of bloodlust and rage. Rather than recoiling from this transformation, Kharn embraced it, seeing in Angron's new form the ultimate expression of the World Eater's philosophy, unrestrained violence elevated to a cosmic principle. The retreat from Nuceria marked the beginning of a new phase in the World Eater's evolution. With their Primarch now a demon prince of Khorne, the Legion's connection to the blood god strengthened. Kharn, as Angron's foremost lieutenant, became increasingly important as an intermediary between the demonic Primarch and the still human Astartes under his command. The influence of the ruinous powers, particularly Khorne, accelerated the changes already occurring within Kharn. Legion Medici reports from this period note physiological alterations beyond normal Astartes parameters, increased muscle density, enhanced reaction times, and most tellingly, abnormal activity in the brain regions associated with aggression and combat awareness. The nails, once the primary driver of his combat fury, were now supplemented by direct warp influence. The War Master's forces pushed inexorably toward Terra as the heresy reached its zenith. Kharn and the World Eaters, now fully committed to Khorne's bloody path, formed one of the most feared contingents in Horus's armada. Their reputation preceded them. Imperial army units surrendered at the mere rumor of World Eaters' deployment, preferring execution to facing the chain axes of Angron's sons. As the traitor armada approached the Sol system, Kharn oversaw combat preparations aboard the Conqueror. The ship had transformed since the beginning of the heresy, its corridors now adorned with flayed skin and brass icons of Khorne. Training cages operated continuously, with battle brothers fighting until exhaustion or death. The World Eaters no longer maintained the pretense of Legion discipline. Company structures dissolved as warriors grouped around the most accomplished killers. Kharn remained at the apex of this bloody hierarchy. His kill tally from the Shadow Crusade had elevated him to near mythic status among his brothers. The Butcher's nails had fully integrated with his neural pathways, creating a deadly synthesis of tactical acumen and berserker fury that made him the perfect exemplar of what the World Eaters had become. The Imperial Palace loomed as the ultimate prize, a fortress monastery spanning an entire continent, defended by the Emperor's most loyal sons. For Kharn, the siege represented the culmination of everything since Istvan, a chance to test himself against the Imperium's finest warriors and offer an unprecedented blood tribute to Khorne. When the traitor forces made planetfall, the World Eaters were assigned to Horus's vanguard. Their role was straightforward: hammer the palace defenses with unrelenting assaults, forcing the Loyalists to commit reserves and creating openings for more specialized forces. It was a role perfectly suited to their capabilities and temperament. Kharn led the first World Eaters' attack against the Annapurna Gate, a massive fortification on the palace's western perimeter. The assault was characteristic of the Legion's new approach: no artillery preparation, no tactical subtlety, just thousands of power-armored berserkers charging directly into the heaviest Imperial defenses. The carnage was immense. Defensive fire from hundreds of heavy weapons positions cut down the first wave of attackers, but the World Eaters pressed forward over their own dead. Kharn, recognizable by his distinctive armor and the ancient chain axe Gorchald, fought at the spearhead. Loyalist records describe him clearing entire sections of the wall single-handedly, his movements a blur of impossible speed as he evaded defensive fire. The Annapurna Gate held for 3 days before falling to the World Eaters' relentless pressure. By the time Kharn's forces breached the inner defenses, nearly 60% of the attacking force had been lost, but such considerations meant nothing to warriors who now valued only Khorne's approval. The breach allowed other traitor elements to penetrate deeper into the palace complex, fulfilling the World Eaters' assigned role in Horus's battle plan. As the siege progressed, the World Eaters' attacks became increasingly difficult to control or direct. Angron, now a fully manifested demon prince, led by example rather than command, sweeping through Imperial defenses with his massive demonic form. Kharn operated as the link between the demonic Primarch and the Legion, translating Angron's rage into something approximating military objectives. The fighting grew more desperate as the traitors pushed deeper into the palace. Imperial fists, blood angels, and white scars defenders contested every corridor and chamber, often fighting to the last man. For the World Eaters, this stubborn resistance was not an impediment, but a gift. Khorne cared not from where the blood flowed, only that it did so in abundance. 17 days into the siege, Kharn's assault group encountered a mixed force of Imperial fists and blood angels defending the approach to the Sanctum Imperialis. The defenders had established interlocking fields of fire covering all approach vectors, with power-armored veterans occupying fortified positions. It was a tactical problem that the old war hounds would have approached with careful consideration, but the World Eaters were no longer capable of such restraint. Kharn led the charge personally, his chain axe reaping a tally of loyalist Astartes as he pushed toward the central defensive position. Fragmentary picked captures from Imperial Fist's helm cams show him weathering fire that would have dropped a dozen ordinary space marines, his armor punctured in multiple places, but his advance unrelenting. The breakthrough came at tremendous cost. For every defender slain, 5 World Eaters fell, but Khorne's blessing sustained Kharn through wounds that should have been fatal. When the last Imperial fist fell, the path to the inner sanctum lay open. Only the Eternity Gate itself, the final barrier before the Emperor's throne room, remained to be breached. It was at the Eternity Gate that Kharn would face his greatest challenge and momentary defeat. The gate was defended by the Legio Custodes themselves, the Emperor's personal guardians, along with elements of the Blood Angels led by their Primarch Sanguinius. These were no ordinary opponents, but warriors whose capabilities matched or exceeded even the most accomplished Astartes. The World Eaters' assault on the Eternity Gate began with Angron himself at the forefront, his demonic form smashing against the golden-armored Custodes. Kharn fought at his Primarch's side, Gorchald rising and falling in a rhythm of destruction. For a brief moment, it seemed the sheer fury of the attack might carry the day. Then Sanguinius entered the fray. The Angel of Baal, perhaps the most formidable of all the Emperor's sons in personal combat, intercepted Angron before the Demon Primarch could breach the inner defenses. Their duel shook the foundations of the palace itself, 2 transcendent beings clashing amid the wider melee. With Angron occupied, the Custodes counterattacked against the World Eaters. Kharn found himself facing Shield Captain Constantin Valdor, the Captain General of the Custodian Guard and one of the deadliest warriors in the Imperium. The duel was brief and decisive. Valdor's guardian spear impaled Kharn through the chest, lifting him bodily before casting him aside like discarded waste. By all conventional medical understanding, the wound should have been fatal. The spear had punctured primary and secondary hearts, shredded one lung, and severed his spine. As Kharn lay broken on the marble floor of the Eternity Gate's approach, his life ebbing away, the World Eaters around him faltered for the first time since the siege began. What happened next has been the subject of theological debate among chaos scholars for millennia. According to accounts from World Eaters who witnessed the event, Kharn's spilled blood formed patterns on the floor, 8 pointed stars and skull runes that glowed with unholy light. The blood god had marked this warrior as his own and would not surrender him so easily to death. Kharn's resurrection occurred as the tide of battle shifted elsewhere. Horus, sensing that time was running short, had teleported to the Emperor's battle barge to force a final confrontation. The psychic shockwave of their clash rippled through the palace, momentarily distracting the defenders at the Eternity Gate. In this moment of confusion, Kharn's body convulsed with unnatural energy. His wounds knitted closed, broken bones fused, and damaged organs regenerated. When he rose again, those nearest him reported that his eyes burned with the same red light seen in Angron's demonic gaze. Khorne had intervened directly, infusing his chosen champion with warp energy. The resurrected Kharn fought with renewed fury, but the moment of opportunity had passed. News of Horus's defeat spread through the traitor forces, shattering their morale and purpose. The demon Primarchs, including Angron, found themselves unable to maintain their presence in real space as the Emperor's psychic might reasserted control over Terra's immediate vicinity. The retreat from Terra was chaotic and desperate. Without Horus to unite them, the traitor legions quickly reverted to self-interest. The World Eaters, lacking strategic objectives beyond slaughter, were among the last to withdraw, continuing to fight even as other traitor elements abandoned their positions. Kharn personally led a rearguard action against pursuing White Scars, buying time for the bulk of his legion to reach their transports. This action, one of the last examples of tactical coherence shown by the World Eaters, allowed thousands of his battle brothers to escape Terra and preserved the legion as a fighting force, albeit one transformed beyond recognition from its original purpose. The period known as the Scouring followed the traitors' retreat from Terra. Loyalist forces, reinforced by previously absent legions like the Ultramarines, pursued the fragmented traitor forces across the galaxy. The Imperium's vengeance was merciless. Worlds that had supported Horus were subjected to exterminatus, while those that had been coerced were given the opportunity to earn redemption through blood sacrifice of their leadership. For the World Eaters, the Scouring represented a fighting withdrawal toward the region of space that would become known as the Eye of Terror. This immense warp storm, expanded by the psychic death scream of Eldinish during the fall of the Eldar, offered refuge from Imperial pursuit. Within its boundaries, the laws of physics bent to accommodate the ruinous power's influence, allowing demon Primarchs like Angron to maintain their physical forms indefinitely. The journey to the Eye was marked by constant combat. Imperial pursuit forces harried the retreating World Eaters, while other traitor legions occasionally clashed with them over resources, or simply due to the blood god's demand for constant slaughter. Kharn emerged as the legion's de facto commander during this period, as Angron's demonic nature made him increasingly detached from material concerns. Once within the Eye, the legion wars began in earnest. Without external enemies to unite them, the traitor legions turned on each other, competing for territory, resources, and the favor of their respective patron gods. The World Eaters, now fully dedicated to Khorne, found themselves particularly at odds with the Emperor's children, who had embraced Slaanesh with equal fervor. These two legions, once allies in the Great Crusade, became bitter enemies. Their opposing philosophies, the disciplined pursuit of sensation versus the unrestrained expression of rage, made conflict inevitable. Kharn led numerous attacks against Emperor's children's strongholds within the Eye, earning particular renown for his slaughter of an entire Noise Marine company on the demon world of Galmec. Despite these external conflicts, the greatest threat to the World Eaters' continued existence came from within. Without the structure of the Great Crusade or even Horus's rebellion to direct their violence, the Legion began to fragment. Warbands formed around powerful champions, each claiming to best represent Khorne's bloody philosophy. Kharn moved between these groups, his status as Angron's former equerry and his personal combat prowess ensuring respect, if not always obedience. The defining moment in Kharn's post-heresy evolution occurred on the world of Scalathrax. This planet, located on the edge of the Eye of Terror, became a battleground between the World Eaters and Emperors, children approximately a decade after the Siege of Terra. The fighting was bitter, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage despite months of continuous combat. As Scalathrax's long night cycle began, temperatures dropped to levels that could freeze even power armor joints. The Emperor's children, still maintaining some tactical discipline, withdrew to their shelters to wait out the worst of the cold. Most World Eaters likewise sought shelter, the practical necessity of survival temporarily overriding their battle lust. Kharn viewed this pause in the fighting with contempt. In his mind, shaped by the nails and Khorne's influence, any respite from killing was weakness. Moving through the World Eater's shelters, he came upon groups of his battle brothers huddled around heating units. Without warning, he attacked, Gorchald reaping a bloody harvest among his own legion. As panic spread through the World Eater's lines, Kharn methodically moved from shelter to shelter, killing any he found seeking warmth rather than continuing the battle. He then took a flamer from a fallen brother and began setting fire to the shelters themselves, forcing both World Eaters and Emperor's children back into the freezing night to continue the battle. The Night of Scalathrax broke the World Eaters as a coherent legion. With their shelters destroyed and Kharn hunting down any who sought new refuge, they had no choice but to fight each other, the Emperor's children, or anyone else within reach. By morning, the carefully maintained coalition of warbands that had preserved some semblance of legion structure had disintegrated completely. As survivors staggered away from the slaughter, they spread word of Kharn's actions. The title The Betrayer was first uttered in the aftermath of Scalathrax, a name that acknowledged both his betrayal of his battle brothers and his role in the greater betrayal of the heresy. Rather than rejecting this title, Kharn embraced it, recognizing that in Khorne's eyes, the only betrayal was the denial of bloodshed. The fragmentation of the World Eaters served Khorne's purposes perfectly. Rather than a single legion that might occasionally know peace between campaigns, the Blood God now had countless warbands of World Eaters spreading across the galaxy, each seeking to outdo the others in offering skulls and blood to their patron. At the center of this bloody diaspora moved Kharn, no longer bound to any single warband, but welcome in all of them for his status as Khorne's most favored mortal champion. The bond between warrior and weapon often transcends mere utility, becoming a reflection of the wielder's soul. For Kharn, no possession better embodies this truth than Gorchald, the ancient chain axe that has become synonymous with his bloody legend. Originally one half of a matched pair wielded by Angron himself during the Great Crusade, Gorchald represents a tangible connection between the champion and his demon Primarch. Forged in the armories of Mars during the early days of the Great Crusade, Gorchald and its twin Gorfather were masterworks of destructive engineering. Their teeth were crafted from rare Urdrak crystals harvested from the death world of Luther McIntyre IX, capable of tearing through ceramite and adamantium with terrifying ease. When the Mechanicum presented these weapons to Angron, they likely never imagined the oceans of blood they would eventually spill. Angron wielded the paired axes throughout many of his early campaigns, their distinctive roar becoming a death knell for any who stood before the Red Angel. Following the Genna massacre, where the World Eaters slaughtered an entire planetary population despite their surrender, the Emperor himself censured Angron. In a rare display of compliance, the Primarch set aside Gorfather and Gorchald, replacing them with a great two-handed sword more befitting his new role as a leader of the Great Crusade. The discarded axes passed to the Legion's weapon masters, who found the temperamental mechanisms nearly impossible to maintain. The crystal teeth would blunt against anything less than perfection in their machine spirit propitiation. Eventually, all but one tech priest abandoned the effort to preserve these magnificent weapons. Gorfather disappeared into the Legion's armories, but Gorchald found new purpose when Kharn, recognizing its value, claimed the weapon for himself. Through unknown rituals and a mechanical affinity that surprised his battle brothers, Kharn succeeded where others had failed. Under his care, Gorchald roared back to life, its machine spirit responding to his touch in ways it had refused all others save Angron. Some World Eaters whispered that the axe recognized a worthy inheritor of the Primarch's legacy. Others, more pragmatically, noted that Kharn had always displayed unusual patience in matters of equipment maintenance, a trait rare among the increasingly unstable Legion. The weapon's teeth, still the original Urdrak crystals, maintain their molecular thin edge through a combination of careful maintenance, and since Kharn's fall to chaos, the blessing of Khorne. Blood sacrifices performed before and after battle appear to rejuvenate the ancient mechanism. Examination of battlefield recordings shows the chain axe cutting through Loyalist Terminator armor as easily as flesh, a feat beyond standard Legion weaponry. Beyond its physical capabilities, Gorchald serves as a powerful symbol. When Kharn wields the weapon once carried by Angron himself, he embodies the living legacy of the World Eater's transformation. The axe represents continuity amid fragmentation, a physical link to the Legion's past even as it carves out its bloody future. Kharn's martial prowess extends far beyond his iconic weapon. Even before his fall to chaos, he ranked among the deadliest close combat specialists in the Legion's Astartes. Training logs from the Great Crusade era show him regularly besting First Company veterans from multiple legions in practice cages. His style combined the brutal directness favored by the World Eaters with an economy of movement that wasted no energy and left no openings. The implantation of the Butcher's nails fundamentally altered this foundation. Where once Kharn fought with calculated precision, the neural implants pushed him toward increasing aggression. However, unlike many of his brothers who lost all tactical awareness to the nail's influence, Kharn developed a unique synthesis. His fury became a weapon in itself, channeled rather than controlling him, at least until the final degradation of his legion. Since his apotheosis as Khorne's chosen champion, Kharn's combat abilities have transcended normal Astartes limitations. Autopsies of warriors who have faced him reveal impossible wound patterns, strikes delivered faster than even transhuman physiology can register, or from angles that defy physical positioning. His movements blur between positions, suggesting either warp-enhanced speed or momentary phase shifting that allows him to bypass normal physical constraints. Perhaps most distinctive among Kharn's combat traits is his resistance to psychic powers. Unlike many Khorne devotees who simply reflect a general disdain for sorcery, Kharn exhibits a specific immunity that has proven fatal to many librarians and enemy psychers. Battle recordings from as recently as the 13th Black Crusade show psychers attempting to target him with witchfire or mental assaults, only to have their powers dissipate harmlessly, or more terrifyingly, rebound upon themselves. This resistance appears to stem from a combination of factors. The Butcher's nails themselves disrupt normal neurological patterns, making mental intrusion difficult. Additionally, Khorne's favor manifests as a kind of anti-psychic field around his chosen champion. Most significantly, Kharn's single-minded focus on combat creates a psychological fortress nearly impenetrable to outside influence. His mind contains only rage and killing intent. There is nothing for mental powers to leverage or manipulate. Imperial Tactica Imperialis manuals specifically warn against deploying psychers against Kharn, noting that attempting to do so typically results in the loss of valuable psychic assets with no tactical gain. Instead, they recommend concentrated firepower from maximum range, though they acknowledge the difficulty of maintaining distance from a warrior who seems drawn to combat like a missile to its target. The relationship between Kharn and Khorne represents one of the most direct connections between a mortal champion and their patron god in recorded history. Unlike many Chaos worshippers who must perform elaborate rituals or sacrifices to gain even momentary attention from their gods, Kharn exists in a state of perpetual communion with the blood god. Each kill reinforces this bond, creating a feedback loop of violence and reward. Khorne's philosophy, often reduced to the simple chant, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, contains subtleties that Kharn embodies perfectly. The blood god values not just indiscriminate slaughter, but the honest test of martial skill. A difficult kill earned through direct combat holds more value than a simple massacre of the defenseless, though Khorne rejects none who fall before his champions. This martial code explains why Kharn, despite his berserker reputation, often seeks out the most formidable opponents on any battlefield. Theological analysis from the Ordo Malleus suggests that Kharn represents an ideal vessel for Khorne's influence precisely because he maintains a degree of tactical acumen alongside his bloodlust. A mindless berserker might spill more blood in the short term, but lacks the capacity to sustain a campaign of slaughter across centuries. Kharn's ability to select targets, coordinate with other chaos forces when necessary, and withdraw when tactical reality demands it makes him infinitely more valuable to the blood god's long-term aims. The physical manifestations of Khorne's favor upon Kharn remain relatively subtle compared to many Chaos champions. Where others might develop bestial mutations or grotesque physical enhancements, Kharn's body remains recognizably Astartes in form, if not in capability. His enhanced strength, speed, and durability derive not from obvious mutation, but from a more fundamental infusion of warp energy into his physical form. This relative lack of mutation reflects Khorne's martial aesthetics. The blood god values function over form, practical combat effectiveness over symbolic transformation. The most visible sign of Khorne's favor appears during combat, when witnesses report Kharn's armor seeming to sweat blood that evaporates into crimson mist, or his eyes blazing with internal fire visible even through his helmet lenses. The Butcher's nails, those archaeotech implants that first set the World Eaters on their path to damnation, continue to influence Kharn's psychology even after 10,000 years of service to Chaos. Unlike many champions who have entirely surrendered their original personalities to their patron god, Kharn maintains fragments of his pre-heresy identity, though twisted almost beyond recognition. The nails function by suppressing all emotions except rage, while simultaneously stimulating the brain's aggression and pleasure centers during combat. This creates a devastating addiction. Only through violence can a bearer of the nails find relief from constant, gnawing pain. For most World Eaters, this condition eventually eroded all higher cognitive functions, reducing them to little more than combat automata between battles. Kharn's experience differs in crucial ways. Neurological examination of World Eaters' captives suggests that the typical nails bearer experiences a complete suppression of the brain's frontal lobe functions during combat, eliminating tactical thinking and self-preservation instincts. Observational evidence indicates that Kharn maintains these functions even in the midst of his bloodiest rampages. He can still recognize advantageous positions, identify priority targets, and even withdraw from unwinnable engagements, all capabilities lost to standard World Eaters berserkers. This unusual resilience likely stems from Kharn's exceptional willpower and intelligence prior to implantation. Historical records describe him as thoughtful and articulate for a World Eater, capable of representing the Legion in diplomatic functions when needed. These qualities didn't disappear with the nails implantation, but were channeled into his new existence. Where other World Eaters lost themselves entirely to the nails' influence, Kharn adapted, creating a functional synthesis between the implant's demands and his inherent capabilities. The result is a warrior of frightening effectiveness, a berserker with strategic vision, a killer who understands the broader context of his slaughter. This combination makes him not just Khorne's favored killer, but his foremost general, capable of directing the blood god's forces toward maximum effectiveness rather than merely exemplifying his rage. It's important to note that Kharn's condition bears no relation to the black rage that afflicts the Blood Angels. The latter stems from the psychic imprint of Sanguinius's death, manifesting as a delusional state where affected Blood Angels believe themselves to be their Primarch during his final battle with Horus. Kharn's mental state, while certainly altered from baseline Astartes psychology, represents a different phenomenon entirely: the integration of archaeotech neural modification with Chaos influence. The psychological impact of 10 millennia as Khorne's champion has left Kharn with a distinctive worldview that combines fatalistic acceptance with religious fervor. He views the galaxy as a vast arena existing solely for the purpose of combat, with all beings merely participants in an eternal tournament to determine the worthy. This perspective allows him to fight without hatred or personal animosity. His killing is an act of religious devotion rather than emotional expression. Interrogation of cultists who have fought alongside Kharn reveals that he rarely speaks during battle, and when he does, his words are terse and functional. Between engagements, however, he occasionally displays flashes of his former eloquence, particularly when discussing matters of combat philosophy or the nature of Khorne's favor. These moments of lucidity, contrasted with his battlefield persona, suggest a compartmentalization that has allowed him to survive mentally where other World Eaters champions have fallen to mindless frenzy. Kharn's longevity as a champion exceeds nearly all other mortal servants of chaos. While demon princes and other ascended beings may exist longer, they have transcended their original forms. Among those who remain recognizably their original selves, few can match Kharn's 10,000 years of continuous service. This durability speaks to both Khorne's continued favor and Kharn's unique adaptability to the pressures of chaos worship. The Betrayer's methodology in combat has evolved over the millennia while maintaining certain core principles. He invariably seeks direct engagement, preferring to close with enemies rather than employ ranged weapons. His standard armament remains Gorchald in his right hand, with a plasma pistol in his left, used primarily to clear obstacles rather than as a primary weapon. Against particularly formidable opponents, he has been observed discarding the pistol entirely to grip his chain axe with both hands, maximizing its devastating impact. Kharn's armor, still bearing the white and blue colors of the World Eaters beneath layers of dried blood, incorporates components dating back to the Great Crusade alongside more recent modifications. The helm, with its distinctive faceplate and bunched cables resembling exposed sinew, has become an icon of terror across Imperial space. Whether the original Mark IV plate has been maintained through technical skill or warp preservation remains unknown, but its durability exceeds standard Astartes equipment by orders of magnitude. The brass collar of Khorne, a manifestation of the blood god's protection visible as a distinctive neckpiece on his armor, represents perhaps the most significant enhancement to Kharn's wargear. This metaphysical construct provides protection against psychic attacks and warp-based weapons that would normally bypass physical armor. It serves as both badge of office and practical defense, marking him as Khorne's chosen while ensuring he cannot be easily eliminated through sorcerous means. Tactically, Khârn operates with surprising versatility despite his berserker reputation. Against conventional forces, he typically employs direct shock assault, using his supernatural speed and durability to break enemy formations before they can establish proper firing lines. When facing more specialized opponents such as other Astartes or elite Imperial units, he demonstrates greater patience, systematically eliminating support elements before engaging primary combat units. This tactical flexibility extends to his operations within the Eye of Terror. Unlike many Chaos champions who establish personal fiefdoms or command permanent warbands, Khârn moves between groups, joining existing Chaos forces for specific campaigns before departing once sufficient blood has been spilled. This nomadic approach prevents stagnation and ensures maximum exposure to combat opportunities across the fractured realms of the Eye. The relationship between Khârn and other servants of Chaos remains complex. Even other Khorne worshippers approach him with caution, aware that his dedication to slaughter recognizes no allies when the bloodlust takes him. During the Legion Wars within the Eye of Terror, Khârn fought alongside and against virtually every major Chaos faction, his allegiance determined solely by opportunities for worthy combat rather than strategic considerations. Despite this unpredictability, many Chaos Lords actively seek Khârn's participation in their campaigns, recognizing the practical benefits of having the Blood God's foremost champion in their ranks. His presence alone can inspire fanatical devotion among Khorne-aligned troops, while striking terror into enemy forces familiar with his reputation. These advantages often outweigh the risk that he might turn on his temporary allies if battle is not joined quickly enough. The First War for Armageddon marked Khârn's return to Imperial records after centuries of sporadic encounters throughout the segmentum. In the 444th year of the 41st millennium, Angron led a massive demonic incursion onto the vital Hive world, with Khârn serving as his mortal herald. Imperial defenders initially mistook the World Eater's vanguard for a typical Chaos raiding party, until recognizing the distinctive blood-caked armor of the Betrayer leading the assault against Hive and Furnace. Khârn's tactical approach during the initial landings demonstrated his evolution as a commander. Rather than the uncoordinated berserker rush Imperial tacticians had anticipated, he implemented a methodical three-pronged assault that systematically disabled the Hive's defensive batteries. Picked captures from surviving Imperial Guard units show him personally leading the central thrust, Gorchald carving through hardened bunker positions, while supporting World Eater's elements secured the flanks. The precision of this attack surprised Armageddon's defenders, who had prepared for mindless aggression rather than coordinated warfare. Colonel Jerton's battle memoir notes, "The traitor known as Kharn operated with a clarity of purpose that belied his reputation. Each position he targeted degraded our ability to maintain a coherent defense, creating vulnerabilities that subsequent waves exploited with terrible efficiency." As the campaign progressed and Angron himself manifested on Armageddon, Kharn's role shifted from tactical commander to combat exemplar. The demonic Primarch's presence naturally assumed strategic primacy, while Kharn focused on eliminating key defensive positions that might slow the World Eater's advance. Targeting data recovered from destroyed Imperial tanks reveals a pattern of precision strikes against command elements, with Kharn consistently appearing where resistance was strongest. The arrival of the Space Wolves under Logan Grimnar changed the campaign's trajectory. Their counter-offensive specifically targeted the demonic leadership, recognizing that banishing Angron would break the invasion's momentum. Kharn responded by establishing a perimeter of World Eater's berserkers around his Primarch, creating a buffer zone that Space Wolf assault units needed to penetrate before reaching Angron. Grimnar's battle strategy adapted accordingly. Rather than engaging the World Eaters directly, Grey Knights teleported into position near Angron, while Space Wolf forces created diversionary attacks to draw Kharn away from his Primarch. This tactic succeeded partially, though Kharn recognized the feint. The Blood God's demands for slaughter made it impossible for him to ignore direct combat opportunities. The resulting confrontation between Kharn and Wolf Lord Arnulf became legendary among the Space Wolves. Arnulf, a veteran of 3 centuries of warfare, led a Terminator assault squad specifically tasked with occupying the Betrayer. The engagement lasted less than 3 minutes, with Kharn systematically dismantling the Terminator squad before decapitating Arnulf with a vertical strike that split his wolf helm down to the breastplate. This victory came at cost. Imperial records confirm Kharn sustained multiple power fist impacts that would have killed an ordinary Astartes several times over. Despite these localized successes, the First War for Armageddon ultimately ended in defeat for the Chaos forces. The Grey Knights succeeded in banishing Angron back to the Warp, while concentrated Imperial counter-attacks isolated and eliminated the remaining World Eater's pockets. Kharn himself disappeared during the final phase of the campaign, with conflicting reports placing him either withdrawing through a warp portal or falling in combat against a Grey Knight strike team. The truth, revealed centuries later through captured cultist testimonies, indicates that Kharn had indeed fallen in battle, but like many times before, Death refused to claim Khorne's chosen champion. Cultists recovered his body from the battlefield and transported it to the demon world of Scalathrax, where blood sacrifices and warp rituals returned him to animation. This cycle of death and resurrection has repeated throughout his long service to Khorne, with each return seemingly strengthening both his combat abilities and the Blood God's hold on his soul. Between the Armageddon campaign and the 13th Black Crusade, Kharn participated in dozens of significant engagements across Imperial space. Unlike many Chaos champions who remained within the Eye of Terror consolidating personal power, he maintained his nomadic existence, appearing wherever bloodshed reached sufficient intensity to draw his attention. The Vaxhalian genocide of 797 M41 bears his unmistakable signature. When the planetary governor of Vaxhalia declared independence from the Imperium, Imperial authorities dispatched a punitive force to restore compliance. As the conflict escalated, Kharn arrived with a small force of World Eaters, ostensibly supporting the rebels. Within weeks, the campaign transformed from a compliance action into a 3-way slaughter, with Kharn's forces attacking both Imperial and rebel positions indiscriminately. Inquisitorial assessment of the aftermath noted a distinctive pattern to the violence. While most Chaos incursions focus on strategic objectives or ritual significance, Kharn's attacks seemed designed to prolong and intensify the conflict itself. He targeted command structures on both sides, eliminated potential peace negotiators, and systematically destroyed non-combatant evacuation points, ensuring the war would continue until total population collapse. This methodology repeats across numerous campaigns attributed to the Betrayer. On Hadrake Tor, he emerged from a warp storm in the midst of an orc WAGH, causing the Greenskins to fragment into competing factions as various warbosses attempted to claim the honor of killing him. The resulting internal conflict weakened the WAGH sufficiently that Imperial forces could contain it, though they subsequently faced Kharn themselves when he turned his attention to their defensive positions. These apparently counterproductive tactics serve Khorne's purposes perfectly. By extending conflicts and maximizing casualties on all sides, Kharn creates sustained blood offerings rather than quick victories. This approach differentiates him from other Chaos champions who typically seek conventional military objectives. For the Betrayer, the battle itself is the objective, its duration and intensity the metrics of success rather than territorial gains or strategic advantage. The 13th Black Crusade represented a convergence point for many of the galaxy's most notorious Chaos champions, with Abaddon the Despoiler marshalling unprecedented forces against Cadia and the Imperium. Kharn's participation in this massive campaign demonstrated both his independent nature and his significance within the Chaos hierarchy. Unlike many warlords who pledged their forces directly to Abaddon, Kharn joined the Black Crusade as an autonomous agent. He arrived at the mustering point in the Maelstrom with a relatively small force of dedicated World Eater's berserkers, offering his service not out of allegiance to the Despoiler, but for the unmatched combat opportunities the campaign promised. Abaddon, recognizing both the value and volatility of the Betrayer, assigned him to spearhead assaults against particularly stubborn Imperial positions. This arrangement satisfied both leaders. Abaddon gained an unstoppable shock trooper for difficult objectives, while Kharn received a constant flow of worthy opponents. Their relationship remained purely transactional, with Kharn notably absent from strategic councils and policy discussions that occupied other Chaos lords. The Betrayer's first major engagement during the Crusade came at the Tyrok Fields on Cadia. Imperial defenders had established a defensive line anchored by Astra Militarum heavy armor and supported by elements from 3 different Space Marine chapters. Previous Chaos assaults had failed to breach these positions, with the overlapping fields of fire creating a killing ground that even dedicated Chaos Space Marines could not cross. Kharn's approach to this tactical problem demonstrated his battlefield genius. Rather than attempting a direct assault, he led a small team of World Eaters through a maintenance tunnel network that Imperial defenders had deemed too narrow for power-armored troops to navigate. By disassembling portions of their armor and proceeding in a half-armored state, a painful process for Marines bonded to their warplate, the strike team emerged behind Imperial lines directly at the command position. The resulting slaughter collapsed the Imperial defense in minutes. With command elements eliminated and communication networks disrupted, the defensive line fragmented into isolated pockets that subsequent Chaos forces overwhelmed individually. Kharn personally claimed the heads of 2 Space Marine captains during this operation, adding their skulls to Khorne's ever-growing tally. As the Crusade progressed and Cadia's situation grew desperate, Kharn encountered perhaps his most significant adversary of the campaign, Saint Celestine. The Living Saint had arrived with Imperial reinforcements, her presence bolstering both the fighting capability and morale of the defenders. Her divine light proved particularly effective against demonic entities, making her a priority target for Chaos forces. Their confrontation occurred during the battle for Kasser Kraf, one of Cadia's last functioning military strongholds. Celestine had been systematically eliminating Chaos commanders, her flaming sword cleaving through warp corrupted armor with ease. Kharn, sensing a worthy challenge, diverted from his assigned objective to intercept the Saint as she cut through a word-bearer's ritual sight. The duel that followed defied conventional combat analysis. Celestine's Empyrean blessed abilities met Kharn's warp-enhanced physiology in a clash that witnesses described as more metaphysical than physical. The Saint's wings of pure light illuminated the battlefield for kilometers around, while Kharn's form appeared to absorb ambient light, creating a shadow that moved with impossible speed. For 17 minutes they fought without clear advantage, Gorchult's howling teeth meeting the ardent blade in showers of material and immaterial sparks. Each landed blows that should have been fatal. Celestine impaled Khârn through his primary heart, while he severed her right wing and shattered her breastplate. Yet both continued, their respective patrons seemingly unwilling to allow either champion to fall. The confrontation ended not in victory for either combatant, but in mutual withdrawal, when a cascading series of explosions from Cadia's failing pylons separated them. Both claimed afterward to have held the upper hand. Imperial propagandists cited Celestine's tactical withdrawal as evidence of her strategic wisdom, while Chaos accounts emphasized Khârn's undiminished combat capability despite grievous wounds. The formation of the Great Rift following Cadia's destruction transformed the galactic battlefield in ways that particularly favored Khârn's operational methods. With warp travel becoming increasingly unpredictable and Imperial communication networks disrupted, isolated worlds found themselves vulnerable to precisely the kind of lightning raids at which he excelled. In the Imperium Nihilus, the portion of the galaxy cut off from Terra's light, Khârn conducted a campaign of systematic slaughter that Imperial historians later termed the Butcher's Circuit. Moving from system to system with a growing fleet of corrupted vessels, he targeted worlds already weakened by warp phenomena or Xenos attacks, maximizing the blood yield while minimizing resistance capable of slowing his progress. The pattern of these attacks reveals Khârn's deep understanding of Imperial psychology. Rather than completely destroying each target, he typically eliminated military leadership and defense capabilities before withdrawing, leaving civilian populations alive but defenseless. These survivors would then petition nearby systems for protection, spreading Imperial forces thinner and creating new vulnerabilities for subsequent raids. This methodology transformed each victim world into a resource drain on the wider Imperium rather than simply a casualty statistic. Imperial tacticians have developed numerous countermeasures against Khârn's berserker assaults over the millennia, with varying degrees of success. The Tactica Imperialis contains an entire appendix dedicated to World Eater's engagements, with specific protocols for confirmed Khârn sightings. These tactics emphasize three principles: distance engagement, environmental manipulation, and target denial. Distance engagement leverages the World Eater's preference for close combat by maintaining maximum firing range and employing artillery or orbital bombardment when possible. Imperial commanders are instructed to sacrifice territory rather than allow Khârn to close to melee range, recognizing that even elite close combat specialists are at severe disadvantage against the Betrayer. Environmental manipulation focuses on creating battlefield conditions that slow berserker advances. Flooding plains, igniting promethium reserves to create fire barriers, or collapsing structures to create impassable rubble can buy critical time for evacuation of essential personnel or assets. The Cadian 122nd Regiment famously survived an encounter with Khârn by detonating their own promethium refinery, creating a burning moat that even the Betrayer could not immediately cross. Target denial represents the most extreme response, the destruction of objectives that cannot be defended. Numerous Imperial commanders have enacted exterminatus rather than allow their worlds to become slaughterhouses for Khârn's offerings to Khorne. While strategically sound, this approach carries severe consequences under Imperial law, with several governors executed for destroying valuable resources despite their tactically correct assessment of the situation. Despite these countermeasures, Khârn's combat record shows consistent success against prepared positions. His adaptability allows him to overcome specialized defenses, while his supernatural durability means that even successful ambushes or traps rarely result in permanent elimination. Most concerning to Imperial strategists is his apparent ability to learn from previous encounters, rarely falling victim to the same defensive strategy twice. Beyond Saint Celestine, Khârn has engaged in notable duels with some of the Imperium's greatest warriors throughout his long existence. Each confrontation adds to his legend, while providing valuable tactical data for Imperial defense planners attempting to counter his techniques. His clash with Chapter Master Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Terrors during the Diamer campaign revealed the complex relationship between the Blood Angel's successors and Khorne's chosen. Both warriors employ aggressive close combat techniques, but Seth's fury remains controlled by transhuman discipline, while Kharn's transcends such limitations. Their duel ended in stalemate when a Necron awakening forced both forces to withdraw, but not before Seth suffered wounds requiring extensive apothecary attention, and Kharn lost his left arm at the shoulder, an appendage reportedly regenerated by the time he reached his extraction point. Perhaps most tactically significant was Kharn's engagement with Grand Master Kaldor Drago of the Grey Knights during a warp storm incursion in the Selvenis Belt. The Grey Knights, with their specialized anti-demonic capabilities, represent one of the few Imperial forces specifically equipped to counter Kharn's warp-enhanced abilities. Drago's Nemesis force weapon bypassed much of Kharn's supernatural durability, inflicting wounds that even Khorne's blessings struggled to heal. The duel ended when Kharn, recognizing the unfavorable nature of the engagement, employed a tactic rarely seen in his combat record: strategic withdrawal. By igniting a cache of volatile chemicals, he created a distraction allowing him to break contact and retreat to his support elements. This rare acknowledgement of tactical disadvantage demonstrates that beneath the berserker exterior, strategic calculation still influences his actions when necessary. In the aftermath of the Indomitus Crusade, with Primarch Robout Guilliman returned and Imperial forces receiving reinforcement from Primaris Space Marines, Kharn has adapted his operational patterns accordingly. Recognizing the enhanced capabilities of these new Astartes, he has increasingly targeted their deployment zones and supply lines rather than engaging them directly in their strongholds. Throughout the fractured domains of the Eye of Terror, the name Kharn resonates with a power few mortal champions can claim. Among the scattered warbands of World Eaters, he occupies a position beyond mere respect or admiration. He embodies the purest expression of what they aspire to become. Unlike many Chaos champions who rule through fear or domination, Kharn's influence stems from his perfect embodiment of Khorne's martial philosophy. He serves as a living exemplar, demonstrating through endless slaughter what true devotion to the blood god entails. Warband leaders frequently invoke his name during pre-battle rituals, offering sacrifices in hopes that the betrayer might join their campaign. These rituals vary in form but share common elements: 8 sacrificial victims, brass bowls to collect blood, and the recitation of Kharn's most famous battles. The underlying belief holds that sufficient bloodshed might draw his attention, bringing the ultimate blessing of Khorne's foremost champion to their cause. This veneration takes on quasi-religious dimensions among certain World Eaters splinter groups. The Gorewolves of Corydus maintain a blood shrine where artifacts allegedly touched by Kharn, spent bolt casings, fragments of armor, even bandages used to bind his wounds, are preserved as sacred relics. Aspirants must undergo trials of combat against increasingly dangerous opponents, with survivors receiving the honor of wearing a single drop of Kharn's preserved blood in a vial around their neck. Other Chaos Space Marines view Kharn with more complex emotions. For many, particularly those dedicated to rival Chaos gods, he represents both threat and cautionary tale. Emperor's Children warriors speak of him with particular bitterness, remembering Scalathrax and the countless clashes between their respective philosophies. Yet even among these rivals, a certain professional respect exists. Kharn's martial prowess transcends factional divisions, earning reluctant acknowledgement even from those who would never willingly fight alongside him. Loyalist Space Marines study Kharn for entirely different reasons. Chapter training doctrines, particularly among those descended from Rogel Dorn and Robout Guilliman's gene lines, use the Betrayer as an object lesson in both tactical threat assessment and the dangers of unchecked aggression. Neophytes learn to recognize his distinctive armor profile and combat patterns, while veterans study after action reports from the rare encounters where Imperial forces successfully repelled him. The Flesh Terrors, themselves struggling against their own bloodthirsty impulses, view Kharn with particular intensity. Chapter Master Gabriel Seth reportedly maintains a private collection of data slates containing all available information on the Betrayer, studying them regularly as a reminder of the fine line separating righteous fury from damnable excess. For chapters battling their own darker natures, Khârn serves as the ultimate warning, the embodiment of transhuman potential corrupted beyond redemption. Beyond the Adeptus Astartes, Khârn's legacy manifests in imperial culture through ghost stories and propaganda. Commissars invoke his atrocities to steel guardsmen against the horrors of chaos, while planetary governors justify harsh security measures by citing intelligence reports of World Eaters' activity in neighboring systems. The Betrayer has become shorthand for the Imperium's existential enemies, a name mentioned in the same fearful tones as Abaddon or Typhus. The warband that typically accompanies Khârn bears little resemblance to conventional military formations, whether loyal or traitor. Unlike other Chaos champions who maintain permanent command structures, Khârn travels with an ever-changing collection of followers drawn from various World Eaters' splinter groups and fresh converts to Khorne's worship. This fluid composition reflects his nomadic existence and the practical reality that many who fight alongside him do not survive more than a handful of engagements. The core of this warband typically consists of veteran World Eaters who have somehow survived multiple campaigns in his presence. These warriors, numbering rarely more than 100, serve as the anchor around which larger forces temporarily coalesce. They understand the unique challenges of campaigning with the Betrayer, including the need to maintain distance during lulls in combat when his bloodlust might target allies as readily as enemies. Operational patterns within this group differ significantly from other Chaos Space Marine forces. Most traitor warbands maintain some version of the command structure they once employed as loyalists, with designated leaders, specialists, and tactical roles. Khârn's followers operate with almost no formal hierarchy beyond the Betrayer's own preeminent position. Warriors fight as individuals, or in loose packs formed through personal affinity rather than tactical assignment. This apparent disorder conceals a functional efficiency that consistently surprises Imperial commanders expecting conventional enemy behavior. Without formal command structures to disrupt or communication networks to intercept, Khârn's forces prove remarkably resilient to standard counter tactics. Each warrior operates with near-complete autonomy, making the force as a whole adaptable to rapidly changing battlefield conditions. Equipment among these followers reflects their pragmatic approach to warfare. Unlike Emperor's children who maintain ornate, personalized weaponry or iron warriors who carefully preserve ancient technology, World Eaters in Khârn's orbit use whatever weapons remain functional. Their armor bears minimal maintenance, often held together through crude field repairs and improvised components. Only their chain axes receive consistent attention, these weapons being both practically necessary and symbolically significant to Khorne's worship. The absence of support elements particularly distinguishes Khârn's warband from other Chaos forces. While warbands like the Black Legion or Death Guard maintain sorcerers, dark apostles, or specialized technical personnel, Khârn's group consists almost exclusively of frontline combatants. This composition limits their operational complexity, but maximizes their shock assault capability, creating a force perfectly suited to Khârn's preferred engagement style. Recruitment occurs through a brutal natural selection rather than deliberate process. Aspirants simply join the warband during campaigns, fighting alongside established members until they either die or prove their worth through survival. Those who display exceptional combat prowess receive recognition through increasingly challenging assignments, while those who falter become casualties with little ceremony or acknowledgement. The artifacts and relics associated with Khârn's 10 millennia of slaughter form a macabre collection scattered across the galaxy. Unlike many Chaos champions who jealously hoard trophies and tokens of their victories, Khârn typically abandons battlefield prizes after the immediate satisfaction of taking them. This casual disregard has created an unusual situation where objects touched by his legend often end up in the possession of others, both enemies and allies. Gorchald remains his only consistent possession, the ancient chain axe never leaving his grip except when temporarily separated during particularly desperate battles. Imperial scholars debate whether the weapon retains any of its original components after 10,000 years of continuous use in the most extreme combat conditions. Analysis of picked captures suggests the motor housing and grip have been replaced multiple times, while the distinctive Erdrak crystal teeth appear unchanged, possibly sustained through some combination of mechanical skill and Khorne's direct blessing. Beyond this signature weapon, various items connected to Kharn have acquired near-mythic status among both Chaos worshippers and Imperial collectors. The Helm of Carven Brass, allegedly cast from melted-down Aquilas taken from 100 Imperial champions, disappeared from Kharn's possession during the Gothic War only to resurface in the personal collection of an Inquisitor Lord 2 centuries later. The circumstances of this transfer remain classified at the highest levels of the Ordo Malleus. The Crimson Gauntlets, a pair of power fists supposedly worn by Kharn during rare instances when tactical necessity required him to set aside Gorchald, have become objects of pilgrimage for Khorne cultists throughout the Ultima Segmentum. Currently held in a heavily fortified shrine on the demon world of Gorswirl, the gauntlets reportedly still drip fresh blood despite centuries without use, each drop containing visions of Kharn's most spectacular kills when consumed by worthy supplicants. Perhaps most disturbing are the bone records, skeletal remains of particularly noteworthy victims preserved by World Eater's apothecaries and inscribed with microscopic accounts of their deaths. These grisly trophies serve as both historical documentation and inspirational relics for aspiring champions. Imperial forces prioritize the destruction of these artifacts when discovered, recognizing their potential to inspire new generations of Khorne worshippers. The physical environments where Kharn has fought extensively often develop unusual characteristics that persist long after his departure. Worlds where he has spilled significant amounts of blood frequently experience localized reality distortions, metal surfaces that weep crimson fluid, vegetation that grows in patterns resembling cornate symbols, or ambient sounds that mimic the distinctive roar of Gorchald's motor. These phenomena typically intensify during periods of violence or social unrest, suggesting a sympathetic connection between Kharn's legacy and the emotional state of those inhabiting affected areas. In the wider context of the 41st millennium, Kharn occupies a unique position within Khorne's eternal war. Unlike demon princes who have transcended mortality or lesser champions bound to specific territories, he operates as a free agent of destruction, appearing wherever the potential for meaningful bloodshed exists. This mobility makes him an unpredictable factor in chaos operations, both an asset when his goals align with broader strategic objectives, and a complication when his bloodlust disrupts more subtle plans. The relationship between Kharn and Abaddon the Despoiler exemplifies this complexity. During the Black Crusades, Abaddon has repeatedly secured Kharn's participation through promises of exceptional combat opportunities rather than through commands or bargains. This arrangement recognizes both Kharn's value as a combat asset and the impossibility of controlling him through conventional authority structures. The Despoiler's lieutenants maintain careful distance between their operations and Kharn's, understanding that his unpredictable nature makes close coordination hazardous. Within Khorne's own hierarchy, Kharn occupies a position distinct from both demon princes and lesser champions. While technically still mortal despite his supernatural enhancements, he commands respect from entities far beyond normal human comprehension. Bloodthirsters, Khorne's greater demons, acknowledge him as the blood god's foremost mortal servant, sometimes fighting alongside him during particularly significant campaigns. This cooperation between demonic and mortal champions represents a rare convergence of Khorne's divided attention. Kharn's significance extends beyond Khorne's domain to the broader Chaos pantheon. His actions frequently disrupt the careful balance between the four major Chaos gods, particularly when he targets champions or operations associated with Slaanesh. This interference reflects Khorne's eternal opposition to his rival god of excess and sensation, with Kharn serving as the physical manifestation of this cosmic conflict. Tzeentch and Nurgle maintain more ambivalent positions, occasionally finding their plans either advanced or undermined by Kharn's unpredictable interventions. The Imperium's strategic assessment of Khârn has evolved over the millennia as patterns in his operations become apparent. Early Imperial responses treated each appearance as an isolated incident requiring maximum local response. This approach proved both resource-intensive and frequently ineffective, as conventional forces rarely possessed the specialized capabilities needed to counter his supernatural advantages. Modern Imperial doctrine approaches Khârn as a systemic threat rather than a tactical one, recognizing that permanently eliminating him likely exceeds available resources. Strategists instead focus on minimizing the damage from each appearance and denying him the spectacular victories that advance Khorne's influence. Rapid evacuation protocols, scorched earth defensive measures, and specialized strike teams trained specifically in anti-World Eaters tactics form the core of this containment strategy. Inquisitorial analysis suggests that Khârn's true significance lies not in his direct military impact, devastating though it often is, but in his symbolic value to chaos worship across the galaxy. Each campaign adds to his legend, inspiring new cults and converting wavering populations to Khorne's worship. This mimetic threat potentially outweighs his physical destructiveness, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where his reputation generates new followers who in turn create opportunities for further legendary deeds. As the galaxy enters an unprecedented period of turmoil following the formation of the Great Rift, Khârn's role appears to be expanding rather than diminishing. With warp phenomena intensifying across formerly stable regions and Imperial defenses stretched beyond sustainable limits, conditions favor precisely the kind of rapid, high-impact assaults at which he excels. Prognosticator engines within the Ordo Malleus predict a significant increase in Khârn-associated activity across multiple segmentums in the coming decades. The ultimate legacy of Khârn the Betrayer transcends his considerable tally of individual kills or conquered worlds. He represents the purest distillation of Khorne's martial philosophy: war without pretense of nobility, slaughter without justification beyond its own execution, and dedication that recognizes no distinction between ally and enemy when blood needs spilling. In a galaxy where even the most corrupted champions often retain some vestige of their original purpose or personality, Khârn stands apart in his complete embodiment of his god's singular demand: blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. After 10,000 years of continuous warfare, Khârn remains what he has always been since that fateful night on Scalathrax, the physical manifestation of warfare stripped to its essential nature. Neither strategist nor conqueror in the conventional sense, he exists as the embodiment of combat itself, a living weapon in service to the most fundamental force in the Chaos Pantheon. While other champions rise and fall, while empires crumble and new threats emerge from the void, Khârn endures, eternal, unchanging, and inevitable as death itself.